Glad to have you tuning in to Curiosity, Not Judgment. Welcome back. My name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
We are on episode 81 today. Can you believe it?
Really? No.
It seems like, we haven't been doing it all that long, but yet if we're doing one a week, well beyond the year mark, and so kind of excited that we're still going strong.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like it doesn't seem that long, and yet it seems like forever because we do this every week.
That's true.
And there's lots of things that are going on in my life right now. I can't believe I had a grandson graduate college.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a grandson who's going to be 21 next week, different grandson.
Wow.
And there's lots of milestones that are going on in my life that are that keep on going. This one's a good one, though. I like this one.
This particular episode?
Yeah.
You like it before we've even done it?
No, this podcast as the 81st episode, this is one of those milestones that I like is happening. Is what I'm saying.
Agreed. Well, there are a lot of positive milestones that I think you are encapsulating in your introduction here. There's also a lot of negative milestones, unfortunately, that we have seen in our world. And so we wanted to talk a little bit today about what happens in the midst of a world gone mad, and how do you live in it, and how do you function well in it, and how do you have a place of peace and have a voice and, just be part of a solution in the midst of tumultuous circumstances. And so I'm going to kind of kick it off to you. I know that you've had some thoughts on the matter, and certainly, you've been through your ups and downs, as we all have, but what happens when the world goes mad and you want to stay sane in it?
One of my favorite old quotes is we used to go to this family camp every year, and this guy had a poster on his door to his office, and it said, "A ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are made for." And I really like that quote because we could curl up in a ball. We could be in our house. Some old comedian said, in America today, if you just lay in bed, somebody will come take care of you, And we could do that, and we could just avoid the world and quote unquote, the stresses of the world, and maybe we'd be happier. Not me. And I think that, so given that we need to be in the world, how do we navigate that? And how do we deal with all of the stuff that's happening? And in a world that just seems to be, as you said, increasingly gone mad, what do you do?
Right. Well, and also, how do you find inspiration and hope in the midst of it? Because I think that's a really important component. It's not just, standing firm against the madness, but it's also navigating a path through it to something that is a lighthouse of joy. I was meeting with somebody at lunchtime today, and she was talking about a client who's just kind of ready to give up and die. Like there's nothing producing any type of joy. There's no stimulation towards involving themselves into, a positive change or a positive outlook in the world. And, somebody in their 70s, and they've lived a life, but certainly to me it seems premature to be in the posture of like, well, I've done it all, time to cash in my chips.
No.
And so we need that lighthouse. We need to be able to have our eyes fixed on something that brings hope and joy, even if we do have madness swirling all around us.
Yeah, and I think there's ways to do that. I mean, starting with what we take in, we've talked about this before, why would you take in poison and hope it doesn't affect you? So I think you can take certain things in. You should say no to some things. You should say a limited amount to others, and some things moderation. One thing that I think you don't have to moderate is joyful, loving relationships. And I think, part of the key for me of being out in the world is having that foundation. I often joke that, I love change and just throw it at me, and you're suggesting a change. Before you even finish your sentence, I'm there with you and helping you figure out how to do a change, right? And but don't touch my comb. And it's kind of a weird thing. In my home life, I like everything to be very ordered. But outside of my home, I like it to be pure chaos. I like change. I survive and thrive in chaos. And so, and my thinking on this is that it's because I have that safe harbor. It's because I have things in a place where I know they are. I've got that foundation. And I think a corollary to that is our relationships.
Yeah.
I tell you, I can't tell you how many times a day I'm just in this craziness. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you know what? I'm going to go home to Andrea, and you know, she's my rock and my anchor, and you know, we have such a great relationship that I can do that now. So I think part of the key is surrounding yourself with some really good key relationships.
Yeah.
There's a book that I went through a couple of years ago now. That's Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Really Am? And I'm not given to books like that on feelings and weirdness like that, but I had to. I went through a phase where I kind of had to deal with my feelings, and so I read the book. And in there, the author makes the point that if we don't have one person that knows everything about us that we can't be completely honest with, completely honest, then our maturity, our growth stops. Because it just becomes a series of masks that you have to maintain, which takes a lot of work, et cetera. Makes sense, doesn't it? And I really took that to heart. And it was funny because it was when I was courting my current wife, Andrea, and we made a pact that we were going to be just completely honest with each other at all times. And it's refreshing. It's scary at times, and you know, it's like, oh gosh, what if you don't like that part about me? But you know, it is absolutely the right thing to do. And then beyond that, a group of friends, colleagues, acquaintances, people in your life that are very close, that can give you safe harbor. I think that's part of the answer.
Yeah. So that safe harbor, though, back to your original statement about the boats, you know, are great in the harbor, but that's not where they're intended to be. You need that place to anchor. You need that place to refuel, to, you know, resupply, fix holes in the
Right.
sails, whatever it is that you have to do on a boat. But then it is time to go back out and adventure again. And so sometimes you can take your safe person with you on an adventure.
Yes,
But
which I do.
sometimes you don't have that opportunity. And
That's
so
right.
you go out into the storm and you face the madness. And when you're there, you know, again, just that visual of the lighthouse, you have to be able to have that point where you can look back and say, okay, I know where land is. I know where that safe space is. And yet I need to be out here in the waves for whatever the purpose is that you've been called out to do, to help fight an injustice, to help deal with something that's gone wrong, to help navigate a really ugly situation. We need those people to go out there. We need them to be change agents in the world of, you know, chaos and crime and injustice and all of these things. But we want to make sure that nobody gets lost out there.
No, and we can help each other out, by the way. When
Yeah.
you see other people in the storm that are being bashed about the waves, you can reach out and help.
Absolutely.
You can be a support for somebody, even if it's a stranger. But you know, it is some of the things that are happening in the world are very overwhelming. Yesterday at lunch, I was talking with some dear friends, and they were talking about this movie, and I wrote it down, and I said, but I'm not sure I'm going to watch it, and it's because it's around trafficking.
Sound of Freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you have the same one. You know my rule, I don't usually watch something unless a couple people, my friends that know me well, recommend it.
I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, anyway, it's about trafficking, human trafficking, and I'm thinking, do I really want to? Do I want to step foot in that? You know, in last week's podcast, we talked about the fact that sometimes we protect ourselves and we don't go too far into something because we don't want to be overwhelmed. And I think that that's something that I might be. It's so repugnant to me. It's so something that I'm not sure I want to know, right? And especially because the premise of the movie is it's happening all around us and we just don't realize it, which scares me even more. And you know, I don't know if I want to do that. So how do you survive in a crazy world where stuff like that is happening? And you know, part of it is being aware of your foundation. I think part of it is being aware of who you are and having that solid foundation. Not only do you have a safe harbor of a home with people around you, and we should talk about what happens if you don't have that, but let's assume you have that. When you're out there, you still have your own safe harbor in you. We talk about Stephen Covey a lot here, and that's only just because that's part of my frame of reference. But he used to say, when you're going out in the world, bring your own weather with you. Don't be affected by the world. Don't be affected by you're in a bad situation or you're you're in this situation or that situation, that can't really affect you as a person. You should carry your own sunny weather with you. You should carry your own values and your own harbor kind of with you. Hard to do, easy to say,
Right.
hard to do, but just yesterday at church, the priest said, he was quoting Thomas More, and I couldn't find the quote. I tried to find it a few minutes ago, because he said, no matter how bad the world gets, it never gets so bad that a good man cannot live within it.
And tell me what the priest meant as he said that.
Well, he was talking about a very crazy time. I think it's funny when you read quotes and you think it's from today and it was from like the 1500s.
Right.
But things were crazy at the time of Henry VIII. There was lots of turmoil. There was lots of things going on. And Thomas More himself was dealing with the fact that his king wanted to form a new church because he didn't like the rules of the old church. And he was eventually indicted and I believe executed for his values on this. But the point is, he was saying that no matter how bad the world gets, a good man, certainly we need good people in it. And he was using man as people back then in that speech. But we need good people. We need the Birgas of the world out there. And I think that we can't stay in harbor if for no other reason, like you said, we need to go out and fight injustice, make the world better, help people establish their own vision and their own thinking, support people who are out there trying to do good.
Yeah.
And I think that that's incredibly important. So we can't just stay in our harbor. We have to go out. I'm saying I have to. We get to go out and affect the world in a positive way, and that's part of our mission and part of our calling, as you said. So how do we do that? How do we carry our own weather, our own harbor, our own values with us when we are being pummeled all the times? You said when a world gone mad, to some people, I'm mad.
Sure.
I'm the problem.
Yeah, I could see that.
Can you?
I don't mean based on,
Wow.
on your personality. I'm saying because of the diversity of values and positions that people have in the world, I could understand how someone could view you as a problem. Same thing with me. So someone would view me as a problem.
That's right. So how do we do that? And how do we kind of bridge that gap between mad people and say, you know what, maybe you're not mad. Maybe we've just taken a position and we felt like we had to defend it. And, maybe there's some middle ground or that's the whole purpose of this podcast is to think about how to remain curious in a world that has gone mad and not judgmental. Because if I judge that the world is mad, why would I even go out in it? If I judge that a certain person or a people group or an action or an entity is bad, then and I'm not curious about why that's going on, well then why would I go out and try to fix things? It's already broken. There's nothing I can do.
That's a good point. My husband is a lover of sports documentaries and sports features and things of that nature, and we've watched a couple things over the last number of weeks, and I am so not that person. When I start feeling intense physical pain from an activity, I am done with it, and I'm not one to want to push through to the finish line. And I think about certain stories. I think about the woman who wanted to swim the English Channel, right? In my mind, I suppose I find that to be a little bit of a foolish task if I'm being in my judgment zone, right? But if I step back and I just choose to be curious and say, okay, what is it that compels her to swim across the English Channel? And then, using this metaphorically, what do we do as people to support her, even if we don't agree with the motivation or even the exercise in general? Because there are things that can be done. Can you be a boat that comes up so that she can rest her hand long enough to, take some drinks of water to rehydrate herself? The things that are instrumental in making sure that she succeeds in her mission, even if it's not a mission that you necessarily agree with.
I tend to be, I tend to support people who are passionate about something. My goodness. I remember hearing this speaker one time say, that he didn't agree with some person, right? This person was into, extreme animal rights. And he says, what? How could you possibly give your whole life to this one cause? Why would you be like that? I mean, there's so many other things. You could talk about human hunger and oppression and slavery and all these things. Why do you care so much about animals? And she just looked back to him and says, what are you passionate about? And I thought, that's a good response.
Yes, it is.
Look, don't worry about what I'm passionate about. What are you passionate about? Let's be passionate people. Why do we all want to walk around like little automatrons that can be replaced by AI, or do we want to be passionate about certain things? I think we are passionate. I think we sometimes get beat down about doing anything about it. I think there's things I guess I shouldn't make this assumption. I should remain curious. I wonder if there are people who walk around and aren't stirred by certain things. Two people are having a conversation about something, and you just have to jump in, right? I mean, that's to me, that's something you're passionate about.
Sure.
Right? They might be strangers, and you just have to put you have to get a word in. I appreciate passion. Now, unless it's, how do I build the best, trafficking ring or something. I mean, as long as there's something that's not bad and you're passionate, not harmful to people. If you're passionate about making the world a better place, if you're passionate about animals, go. Why would I care about what you're passionate about? And by the way, I may say, hey, I hear you and I want to support. I'm willing to go about this far, but I'm glad there's people out there like you that are making me aware of the issues and that are pushing, because otherwise there's probably no advocates for this group of beings on the planet. So I appreciate you. Now, I may not agree with all of your tactics and I may not go this far. I'm down here on the table, you got to see. But I'll go this far.
Yeah.
And thank you for helping me get there.
Yeah.
I think people who are passionate are wonderful people. I'd much rather be around a bunch of people who are passionate than a bunch of people who don't care about anything.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So what happens if we find ourselves in a little bit of that position of apathy? Maybe our passion has waned. I was talking about that older gentleman at the beginning of this episode even that, had been deeply involved with all kinds of project and, been a huge donor and an advocate, and maybe not seeing the change that he had hoped to see over the course of his life. And now the burnout happens and now the apathy sets in. So how do we come alongside to support somebody maybe who's sinking in a different way?
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about that ever since you said it. And I feel like, man, poor guy. I think that we have to do a little bit of visioning. And look, the guy may just have given up and there's no hope and there's nothing we can do for him. Fine. He may choose that, and who am I to say that someone can't make that choice? It's not a choice I would make today in these 5 seconds. It might be a choice that I make later in my life. Who knows? We're all on different journeys.
Sure.
However, if I saw a glimmer of hope that the guy really wasn't happy that he was like that, I would say, hey, let's sit down and make a new vision for your life. Even though the things, assuming it is burnout, assuming it is cynicism based on, him thinking that he's been beating his head against the wall and something his whole life and nothing changed. Okay, well, there's different things to beat your head against the wall on, and there's different walls that aren't as hard, and there's different things that you might do. I find sometimes people in that position need a vision of something that they can do. Okay, well, let's say you've been beating your head against world hunger and there's more people starving today than when you started. That's a terrible example, but let's just...
No, it's actually not. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
short.
please.
Well, so yeah, I think that's a great example. You've got this mammoth issue, and you have more people hungry now than when you first started, and maybe the natural inclination is to get despondent and frustrated and say, I've put all my time, my money, and my effort into this over the last 40 years, and I've got nothing to show for it. But if you can scale back and have some marker, some indication of success, and it maybe has to start really small in your local community, but you need that win. You need that win.
Well, and by the way, I think that win is important anyway. I mean, even if you're not burned out, my goodness, if you can't see some progress in what you're doing in life, I could see myself getting burned out at some point.
Yeah.
Actually, I would see myself quitting that and doing something where I think I could make some progress. But anyway, the point is, anytime you're trying, even if your goal is scale, I think it's important to start with one or two people, and then really think to yourself, is this something I can scale? I think a lot of folks get very frustrated when they go out with some very good intentions on something that's a very good cause, but they realize they can't. When I tried to play guitar, I wanted to play Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven, and when that didn't happen in 2 weeks, I gave it up. That's what I'm saying. I mean, what? You're not going to play, Stairway to Heaven in 2 weeks. Find something that you can affect on a local level, and even it's like the boy with the starfish, right? Throwing the starfish in, and the old man comes along and says, you can't save all these starfish, looking at all of them on the beach. Throws another one in and says, yeah, but I saved that one, and that one cares. And you know what? Just do one, and then take the win.
Yeah.
And maybe he's stopped taking the win too, right? And so anyway, I think there is hope for folks who have lost hope. I think one of the things that brings me the greatest joy is to help people get vision and hope in their lives when they seem hopeless and visionless.
Yeah. That's really powerful. So whether you find yourself in a place of burnout, maybe you've been advocating for a certain situation, an evil in the world that you've been trying to fight and have not seen the results that you were hoping to see, and need that bite-sized win that can kind of refuel that fire. Or, if you're out there in the midst of things right now and the waves are getting really high, finding that lighthouse, finding that safe harbor, and looking around, as you said, for the other ships near you that can help lift you up in that place. I think maybe to close out on some thoughts about that if you are in the midst of fighting these battles in a really hard situation, who do you turn for to help if you don't have the opportunity to go back to harbor?
Think about the people in the Antarctica who are very keenly aware of how far they can get away from the fire. From the home base,
Yeah.
right? Okay, I can venture out this far, I can do this, and maybe you get better at venturing out far, but you realize that you've got to come back and sleep next to a fire every night.
Yep.
That is an analogy that works for everything you do. Remember to recharge, rebuild, put your mask on first, as they say on the airline, and so that you can help others, and really work intentionally on what that safe harbor is and how you take care of yourself when you're out in that mad world, and stay curious.
All right, lots of things to think about on this one. So, as always, we welcome your comments, your questions, your feedback. You're welcome to post comments here on the YouTube channel. If you're listening to this rather than watching it, please feel free to leave a comment. Always love to know what's on your mind. So, the kind of home base of operations for us is curiositynotjudgment.com. And you can find all the platforms listed right there. And we'll look forward to catching up next week.
Take care.